The cursor blinked mockingly at me from the black screen as I stared at line 847 of what should have been simple database code. 3 cups of cold coffee sat abandoned on my desk, and the Seattle rain hammered against our apartment windows like an angry debt collector. I rubbed my eyes and glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m. Another thrilling Friday night in the life of Eli Turner, software developer extraordinaire. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. That's when I heard Kara's voice through the paper-thin wall separating my home office from our bedroom. She was on the phone, her tone light and flirty in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "Oh, please, Jake, you know Eli's just my rent sponsor at this point." She laughed, the sound cutting through me like a rusty blade. "He pays the bills, doesn't ask questions, and stays out of my way. Honestly, I could do so much better." I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Rent sponsor. That's what 3 years of relationship had boiled down to. I was an ATM with legs and a decent credit score. "The boutique's finally taking off," she continued, oblivious to my eavesdropping. "Once I get established, I won't need his little programmer salary anymore. God, you should see him, hunched over that computer all day like some kind of troll." I always wanted to be mythological, I thought bitterly, just not the kind that lives under bridges. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but our walls were built by the lowest bidder. "Trent's been helping me with inventory. He actually gets the fashion world, you know? Not like Eli, who thinks designer jeans come from Target." Trent Reyes. I should have known. Former high school quarterback turned self-proclaimed entrepreneur with the kind of artificial charm that fooled everyone except the people who had to live with its consequences. I'd seen him at Kara's pop-up events, all flash and swagger, treating her boutique like his personal hunting ground. "Anyway," Kara's voice brightened again, "I should go. Eli's probably still debugging something pathetic. I swear, sometimes I wonder if he even notices I exist anymore." The irony was suffocating. I noticed everything: how she'd started dressing up for inventory meetings, how her phone was always face down during dinner, how she'd begun treating our shared space like a hotel she was temporarily stuck in. I heard her hang up and waited, listening to her footsteps pad toward the bathroom. The shower started running. Perfect. Time to do some debugging of my own, but not on code. I opened my laptop and started scrolling through Kara's Instagram. She'd been posting constantly from her boutique events, photos of racks of overpriced clothes, artfully arranged flat lays, and herself posing with various business partners. But it was the tagged photos that told the real story. Trent appeared in dozens of them, always hovering close, his hand on her lower back or his arm casually draped around her shoulders. The comments were even more revealing. Inside jokes, flirty exchanges, and way too many fire emojis for what was supposed to be professional networking. The bathroom door opened, and Kara emerged in her silk robe, toweling her dark hair. She glanced at my office doorway and sighed dramatically. "Still working?" "It's almost midnight, Eli." I swiveled in my chair to face her. "Just finishing up. How was your evening?" "Fine. Boring. Watched some Netflix." The lie rolled off her tongue effortlessly. "You should probably get some sleep. You look tired." "Thanks for the concern." I kept my voice neutral, but something in my tone must have registered because she paused, studying my face. "Are you okay? You seem different. Just thinking about things. About us." She shifted uncomfortably. "What about us?" "Well, I was wondering, in this relationship, what exactly am I to you?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Kara's eyes narrowed slightly, and I could practically see her calculating the safest response. "What kind of question is that? You're my boyfriend. We live together." "Right. Your boyfriend who pays the bills, doesn't ask questions, and stays out of your way." Her face went pale, then flushed red. Were you listening to my phone call? Hard not to when you're talking loud enough to wake the neighbors. Though I have to say, rent sponsor is creative. I always thought of myself as more of a financial enabler, but your version has a nice ring to it. Eli, that's not. I was just venting to Jake. You know how he is, always asking about my love life. I didn't mean. Actually, I think you meant exactly what you said. I stood up, suddenly feeling clearer than I had in months. And you know what? You're absolutely right. What? I'm not your boyfriend. I'm your roommate who pays bills, and starting tomorrow I'm going to embrace that role completely. She stared at me like I'd started speaking in code. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done pretending we're in a relationship when we're clearly just sharing living expenses. From now on, we split everything down the middle. Rent, utilities, groceries, everything. Roommates, right? That's what roommates do. You're being ridiculous. You were just being honest for once. I appreciate that. It's refreshing. I walked past her toward the bedroom, but she grabbed my arm. Where are you going? To get my things. Roommates don't share beds, Kara. They have separate rooms. I'll take the couch until we figure out a better arrangement. Her grip tightened. Eli, stop. You're overreacting. Can't we just talk about this? We just did. You told Jake everything I needed to know. I gently pulled free from her grasp. Don't worry. I'll still pay my half of everything. Wouldn't want to be a roommate. As I gathered my pillow and a blanket from her bedroom, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Relief. The pretense was finally over. No more wondering why she seemed distant. No more making excuses for her behavior. No more trying to fix something that had been broken for longer than I'd wanted to admit. This is insane, she said, following me to the living room. You can't just decide we're roommates because of one stupid comment. I'm not deciding anything. I'm just accepting what you already decided. I arranged the blanket on our sectional sofa. Besides, this way you won't have to pretend anymore. Must be exhausting acting like you care about someone you consider a rent sponsor. I do care about you. Sure you do. The same way I care about my landlord, as long as the check's clear and nobody causes problems. She stood there in her silk robe, looking lost and angry and beautiful in a way that would have made me apologize and beg forgiveness just a week ago. But rent sponsors don't grovel. They just pay the bills and mind their own business. Fine, she said finally. If this is how you want to be, fine, but you're making a huge mistake. Probably, but at least it's my mistake to make. She stormed back to the bedroom and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I settled onto the couch and stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain and the sound of my phone buzzing with what I assumed were angry texts I had no intention of reading tonight. For the first time in months, I fell asleep easily. I woke up at 6 a.m. to the sound of Kara rummaging through the kitchen cabinets with the subtlety of a burglar having a nervous breakdown. She was making coffee, loudly, and muttering under her breath about childish behavior and passive-aggressive nonsense. I stretched, feeling surprisingly good, despite sleeping on a couch that was clearly designed by someone who'd never actually tried to sleep on one. The morning light filtering through our windows made everything look different, cleaner somehow. Or maybe that was just the clarity that comes from finally admitting your relationship died months ago, and you've been weekend at Bernie'sing it ever since. Morning, roomie, I called out cheerfully as I padded to the kitchen. Kara was dressed for one of her boutique events, high-waisted jeans, a crop top that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and enough jewelry to set off a metal detector. She looked good, which I could now appreciate from a purely aesthetic standpoint, like admiring a painting you can't afford and don't particularly want to own. Don't, she said without looking at me. Don't what? Say good morning? I thought roommates were supposed to be polite to each other. She slammed her coffee mug down hard enough to slosh dark liquid across our white countertop. This is ridiculous, Eli. You're acting like a child. I'm acting like a roommate. Which, according to you, is what I am. I opened the refrigerator and started pulling out ingredients for breakfast. Speaking of which, we should probably label our food. I don't want to accidentally eat something you bought. Our food? Eli, you buy all the groceries. Right, but that was when I thought I was your boyfriend. Roommates split expenses. I grabbed a Sharpie from the junk drawer and started writing Eli on everything I could remember purchasing, which was basically everything except a bottle of overpriced kombucha and some organic kale that had been slowly decomposing for 2 weeks. Kara watched in horror as I labeled the milk, eggs, bread, coffee, and even the condiments. You're insane. I'm organized. There's a difference. I held up the kombucha. This one's yours, right? I'll put it on your shelf. My shelf? Left side of the fridge is yours. Right side is mine. Same with the cabinets. We should probably make a chore chart too. Wouldn't want any confusion about who's responsible for what. Her face was cycling through expressions like a slot machine. Anger, disbelief, frustration, and something that might have been panic. Eli, this is our home. You can't just reorganize everything because you're having some kind of breakdown. Not a breakdown, a breakthrough. I finally understand what I am to you, and I'm embracing it. I cracked 2 eggs into a pan, my pan, which I'd now labeled with a piece of masking tape. Want some breakfast? Oh wait, roommates buy their own food. Never mind. She grabbed her purse and keys with enough force to qualify as assault. I'm going to the boutique. When I get back, I want you to have figured out how to act like an adult. Have fun with the inventory, I said, not looking up from my eggs. Tell Trent I said hi. The front door slammed so hard, I was surprised it didn't fall off its hinges. I ate my breakfast in peaceful silence, then did something I hadn't done in months. I called in sick to work. Not because I was actually sick, but because I had some research to do, and it was the kind that required my full attention. First stop, the gym. I'd been meaning to get back into shape for years, but between work and trying to salvage a relationship that had been on life support, I'd never found the time. Now I had nothing but time. Knockout Fitness was a no-frills boxing gym tucked between a Vietnamese restaurant and a shop that sold nothing but different types of salt. The kind of place where the equipment was old but functional, and the mirrors were cracked but clean. Perfect for someone who needed to hit things legally. You look like you need to punch something, said the guy behind the counter. He was maybe 45, built like a fire hydrant, with graying hair and the kind of scars that suggested he'd learned boxing the hard way. That obvious? It's either that, or you're lost. Most people who wander in here are one or the other. He extended a hand. Dave Martinez. I run this place. Eli Turner. And yeah, I need to punch something, preferably something that won't press charges. Dave laughed. Heavy bag it is. You ever box before? Does punching my pillow at 3 a.m. count? Not unless your pillow hits back. Come on, let's get you wrapped up. For the next 2 hours, Dave taught me the basics. How to stand, how to wrap my hands, how to throw a punch without breaking my wrist. The physical exertion felt incredible, like I was sweating out months of frustration and resentment. By the time we finished, my arms felt like overcooked pasta, but my head was clearer than it had been in ages. Same time tomorrow? Dave asked as I gathered my things. Absolutely. This beats therapy. Sometimes it is therapy, just with more bruising. I left the gym feeling like a different person, stronger, more focused, and with a plan starting to form in the back of my mind. If Kara wanted to treat me like a roommate, I'd be the best damn roommate she'd ever had. The kind who minded his own business, followed the rules, and definitely didn't interfere in her personal life. Even when that personal life involved sneaking around with Trent Reyes. I spent the rest of the day setting up what I mentally dubbed Operation Roommate. I divided our shared spaces exactly in half, labeled everything I owned, and even drew a line down the middle of the couch with masking tape. If she wanted boundaries, I'd give her boundaries that would make the Berlin Wall look like a suggestion. But the real work happened on my laptop. I created a spreadsheet breaking down every shared expense from the past 6 months: rent, utilities, groceries, streaming services, even the Wi-Fi. Kara owed me $2,147.23, not counting interest. I printed out an itemized bill and left it on her nightstand with a note: roommate expense reconciliation, payment plan available upon request. Then I did something that felt both petty and brilliant. I changed all the passwords: Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, even the Wi-Fi. If we were splitting expenses, we were splitting access too. She could pay for her own entertainment. The final touch was a small security camera I ordered for same-day delivery. Nothing fancy or illegal, just a basic home security device that I positioned to monitor our front door. Roommates were entitled to know who was coming and going, right? Especially when one of them had a habit of entertaining guests while the other was at work. Kara came home around 8, looking frazzled and carrying what appeared to be several bags of boutique inventory. She struggled with the front door for a minute before realizing the locks had been changed. I opened the door with a smile. "Sorry, roommate security upgrade. Here's your new key." She stared at the key like it might bite her. "You changed the locks?" "Just being responsible. Roommates should both have equal security, don't you think?" She pushed past me, dropping her bags in the entryway. "The Wi-Fi isn't working." "Oh, that. Yeah, I updated the password. Your half of the monthly bill is $22.50. Once you pay it, I'll give you the new password." "Are you kidding me right now?" "Absolutely serious. There's an itemized bill on your nightstand. We can set up a payment plan if the lump sum is too much." She stormed toward the bedroom, and I heard her shriek when she found the bill. A few minutes later, she emerged with the papers clutched in her fist. $3,000? You want me to pay you $3,000? $2,847.23. But I rounded up to cover my time calculating everything. "This is insane. Half of this stuff is groceries I ate too." "Right, which is why you owe half. That's how roommate expenses work." She threw the papers at me, which was dramatically satisfying but ultimately ineffective since they just fluttered to the floor like very expensive confetti. "I'm not paying this." "That's fine, but until you do, you're responsible for your own food, entertainment, and utilities. I've already talked to the cable company about splitting the service. You can't do that." "Actually, I can. I called them this morning. Turns out when you're the primary account holder, you have a lot of flexibility." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Who are you? This isn't like you at all." "You're right. The old me would have ignored the problem and hoped it went away. But roommates don't ignore problems. They address them directly and fairly." "Stop saying roommates." "Why? It's what you wanted. What you told Jake we already were." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to deflate slightly. "Eli, can we please just talk about this like adults?" "We are talking about it like adults. Adults who share living space and split expenses equally." I bent down to collect the scattered papers. "Look, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to establish clear boundaries so we can coexist peacefully." "Coexist peacefully," she repeated slowly. "Exactly. No drama, no confusion, no unrealistic expectations. Just two people sharing an apartment and minding their own business." Something in her expression shifted, and for a moment I thought she might actually apologize, might admit that her phone conversation had been cruel and unfair. Instead, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I'm staying at Lana's tonight. Maybe when I come back tomorrow, you'll have remembered how to act like a human being. Drive safe, roomie, and don't forget, rent's due on the 1st. Your half is $1,200. The door slammed again, but this time I was ready for it. I walked to my laptop and checked the security camera feed. Sure enough, there was Kara on the small screen, standing in our hallway and talking angrily on her phone. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I didn't need to. I had a pretty good idea who she was calling, and an even better idea of what they'd be discussing. Let them talk. Let them plan. Let them think they were dealing with the same pushover who'd been subsidizing Kara's lifestyle while she shopped for his replacement. They were about to learn that roommates could be full of surprises. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, none of which I bothered reading. If Kara wanted to communicate, she could do it like a proper roommate, through written notices and formal requests. I was halfway through my coffee when someone started pounding on the door like they were trying to break it down with their fists. I checked the security camera feed and wasn't surprised to see Trent Reyes standing in the hallway, looking like an angry Ken doll in an expensive tracksuit. I opened the door with my friendliest smile. "Good morning, you must be Trent. I'm Eli, Kara's roommate." He was bigger than I'd expected, not just tall, but broad in the way that suggested either good genetics or a serious gym habit. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour, and his jaw looked like it had been chiseled by someone who took their craft very seriously. "Cut the bullshit," he said, pushing past me into the apartment. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Making coffee. Want some? Fair warning, though, roommates provide their own beverages." He spun around to face me, and I got my first good look at his eyes. They were the kind of blue that probably made people write bad poetry, but right now, they were flat and cold. "Kara's upset, really upset. She spent all night crying because of your little tantrum." "That's unfortunate. I hate when roommates are upset. Creates a negative living environment." "Stop calling her your roommate." "But that's what she is. What she told me she wanted to be." I closed the door and leaned against it casually. "I'm just respecting her wishes." Trent stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over me. It was an intimidation tactic that probably worked great on other people, but I'd spent yesterday getting punched by a guy who used to fight professionally. Trent's posturing felt like amateur hour. "Look, nerd," he said, his voice dropping to what I assumed was supposed to be a threatening whisper. "I don't know what game you think you're playing, but it ends now. Kara doesn't need your drama, and she sure as hell doesn't need you making her life difficult." I agree completely. That's why I've simplified everything. No more relationship drama, no more emotional complications, just two people sharing expenses and living space. It's much cleaner this way. You're pathetic, you know that? Hiding behind some passive-aggressive roommate act because you can't handle the fact that she's outgrown you. The words stung because they weren't entirely wrong. Kara had outgrown me, or at least outgrown the version of me that paid for everything and asked for nothing in return. But that version was gone now, replaced by someone who'd learned that the best way to deal with people who underestimate you is to let them keep underestimating you. "You're probably right," I said. "I am pretty pathetic. Good thing roommates don't need to impress each other." He studied my face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "What's your angle here? What do you want?" "Nothing. I want nothing from Kara except her half of the rent and utilities. Everything else is her business." "Including who she spends time with?" "Especially that. Roommates don't interfere in each other's personal lives." Something shifted in his expression, suspicion giving way to what looked like relief. He'd come here expecting a fight, maybe even hoping for one, and instead he'd found exactly what he'd always seen me as, a non-threat. "Good," he said, straightening his tracksuit jacket. "I'm glad we understand each other." "Perfectly. And hey, thanks for helping Kara with her boutique inventory. It's nice when roommates have supportive friends." He smiled then, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes but was probably devastating in the right lighting. "Yeah, well, Kara deserves someone who actually supports her dreams, someone who gets what she's trying to build." "Absolutely. She's lucky to have found that." We shook hands like civilized adults, and I watched him leave with the satisfied swagger of a man who'd just eliminated his competition without throwing a punch. He had no idea that I'd spent the entire conversation studying him, his mannerisms, his tells, the way his confidence was just a little too bright to be entirely real. After he left, I did something that felt both reasonable and slightly insane. I went shopping for spy equipment. Not the high-tech stuff you see in movies, just simple, legal tools that any concerned roommate might use to monitor their living situation. A small GPS tracker that attached magnetically to metal surfaces. A voice-activated recorder no bigger than a thumb drive. A second security camera for the parking garage. I told myself I was just being thorough, just protecting my interests as a co-tenant. But the truth was simpler and darker. I wanted to know exactly what Kara and Trent were up to, and I wanted evidence of everything. The GPS tracker went under Trent's Mustang, a flashy red convertible that screamed, compensating for something, loud enough to wake the neighbors. The voice recorder went in a potted plant near our front door, positioned to catch conversations in the hallway. The second camera gave me a perfect view of the parking garage entrance. Within a week, I had a complete picture of their routine. Trent came by every Tuesday and Thursday while I was at work, usually staying for 2 to 3 hours. They went to lunch together on Wednesdays, always at expensive places that Kara couldn't actually afford. And every Saturday, they had what Kara called inventory meetings at a storage unit across town. But it was the conversations I recorded that told the real story. "He's being so weird," Kara's voice crackled through my headphones as I sat in my office, pretending to debug code while actually debugging my life. Like, scary weird. He's treating me like we're actually just roommates. "Maybe that's for the best," Trent replied. "Makes things easier for us." "I guess. It's just, I don't know. I expected him to fight for me, you know? To at least try to win me back." "Baby, why would you want him to fight for you when you've already got someone better?" There was a pause, then the sound of kissing that made my stomach turn, not because I was jealous. That feeling had died somewhere between rent sponsor and Trent's intimidation visit, but because I was listening to the soundtrack of my own stupidity. 3 years of believing in something that had never been real. "The boutique's finally starting to turn a profit," Kara continued. "A few more months, and I won't need his half of the rent anymore." "What about the new inventory we talked about? The stuff from that warehouse in Portland?" "What about it?" "Well, if we're going to expand, we need capital. And your roommate's got that tech job, right? Probably makes decent money." Another pause, longer this time. "Trent, what are you suggesting?" "Nothing illegal. Just creative financing. He's been supporting your business indirectly this whole time by covering your living expenses. Maybe it's time he supported it directly." "You want me to ask him for money?" "I want you to take what you're owed. You've been putting up with his passive-aggressive bullshit for weeks now. Seems like he should pay for making your life difficult." The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. They weren't just planning to use me as a bank account. They were planning to justify it as some kind of compensation for my difficult behavior. The behavior that consisted entirely of asking to be treated like an equal partner in my own living situation. I spent the next few days planning my response. Not revenge, exactly. More like a controlled experiment in cause and effect. They wanted to treat me like a mark, like some pathetic loser who'd roll over and pay up when pressured. Time to show them what happened when marks started marking back. The first step was research. I used my tech skills to dig into Trent's background, and what I found was illuminating. 3 failed businesses in the past 5 years, all of them folding just before creditors came calling. A pattern of targeting women with small businesses, offering to help with expansion, then disappearing when things got complicated. 2 restraining orders from ex-girlfriends, both dropped after out-of-court settlements. Trent Reyes wasn't just a player. He was a predator with a business plan. The second step was documentation. I printed out everything I'd gathered, financial records, legal documents, social media posts that contradicted his stories about his business success. I organized it all in a folder labeled Roommate Safety Information and locked it in my desk drawer. The third step was the hardest. I had to let them make the first move. I had to wait for them to approach me with their scheme, whatever it was, and let them think they were in control right up until the moment I proved they weren't. I didn't have to wait long. On a Thursday evening, while I was at the gym learning how to throw a proper uppercut, Kara texted me. "Can we talk when you get home? It's important." I knew exactly what she wanted to talk about, and I knew exactly how I was going to respond. But first, I had one more stop to make. The storage unit facility was exactly where my GPS tracker had said it would be, and Trent's Mustang was parked right outside Unit 247. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching and taking pictures, until they finally emerged with several boxes of what looked like clothing, except the boxes were labeled with the names of boutique stores I'd never heard of, and the clothes they were loading into Kara's car still had tags from completely different retailers. I smiled as I drove home. They weren't just planning to scam me. They were already running a scam using Kara's boutique to fence stolen or counterfeit merchandise. And they were about to ask their mark to invest in their criminal enterprise. This was going to be even easier than I'd thought. Kara was waiting for me in the living room when I got home, perched on the edge of our sectional sofa like she was afraid it might bite her. She'd dressed up for the occasion, a flowing sundress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, paired with jewelry that caught the light every time she moved. She looked beautiful and nervous and guilty as hell. "How was the gym?" she asked, which was probably the first time in months she'd shown any interest in my activities. "Educational. Dave's teaching me about combinations. Apparently, the secret is knowing when to throw the right hook." I dropped my gym bag by the door and grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, my side of the fridge. "You wanted to talk?" "Yeah. Yes." She smoothed her dress and took a deep breath. "Eli, I've been thinking about everything that's happened between us, and I owe you an apology." This was unexpected. I'd been prepared for manipulation, guilt trips, maybe even tears. A straightforward apology wasn't in the playbook I'd written for her. "Okay," I said carefully. "I'm listening." "The thing I said to Jake about you being a rent sponsor, that was cruel and unfair. You've been nothing but supportive of my dreams, and I took that for granted." She looked down at her hands, which were twisted together in her lap. "I was frustrated about money, about the boutique struggling, and I took it out on you in the worst possible way." "I appreciate that," I said, and meant it. Even if this was part of some larger scheme, it felt good to hear her acknowledge what her words had done to me. "The truth is, I've been scared. Scared that I'm not good enough, that the boutique will fail, that I'll have to give up on everything I've worked for and go back to some soul-crushing office job." Her voice cracked slightly, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. "And when I'm scared, I lash out at the people closest to me. It's not fair, and it's not right, but it's what I do. Kara, let me finish, please." She looked up at me, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've been distant and selfish and probably a terrible girlfriend, but I want to fix this. I want to fix us." There it was, the opening I'd been waiting for. Not the direct ask for money, but the emotional setup that would make the ask seem reasonable, even romantic. She was going to tell me about some amazing business opportunity, some chance to take the boutique to the next level, and all she needed was a little financial support from someone who believed in her. "How?" I asked. "Well, I've been working with this business consultant." Of course she had. "And he's helped me identify some real opportunities for growth. There's this warehouse in Portland that's liquidating designer inventory at incredible prices. We're talking about pieces that retail for hundreds of dollars, available for $20 or $30 each. Sounds too good to be true. That's what I thought too. But Trent, that's the consultant. He's done deals like this before. He has connections in the fashion industry, relationships with distributors who need to move inventory quickly." Trent, the business consultant. I had to admire the creativity, even as I mentally added it to my growing file of lies and misdirection. "So what's the opportunity?" If I can come up with $15,000 by next week, I can buy enough inventory to stock 3 pop-up events and probably make back double the investment. It's a chance to finally make the boutique profitable, to turn it into something real instead of just a hobby that barely pays for itself. $15,000. More than I'd expected, but not more than I could technically afford. My savings account had about $22,000 in it, money I'd been setting aside for a down payment on a house, back when I thought Kara and I had a future that included joint major purchases. "That's a lot of money," I said. "I know. And I know I have no right to ask, especially after how I've treated you. But Eli, this could change everything for us. If the boutique takes off, I could finally contribute equally to our expenses. I could be a real partner instead of just someone you're supporting." The tears were flowing now, and she wiped them away with the back of her hand in a gesture that was either genuinely vulnerable or expertly calculated. Probably both. "I've already talked to my parents, but they're still paying off my student loans and can't help. And the bank won't give me a business loan without more collateral than I have." She stood up and moved closer to me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something expensive and floral that I'd helped pay for. "You're the only person I trust enough to ask, the only person who's ever really believed in me." It was a masterful performance. If I hadn't spent the last week documenting her actual activities, if I didn't know about the storage unit full of suspicious merchandise and Trent's history of targeting women with small businesses, I might have been moved enough to write the check on the spot. Instead, I found myself genuinely impressed by her commitment to the con. She'd hit every emotional note perfectly: vulnerability, regret, hope, desperation. She'd made it about us, about our relationship, about giving me the chance to be her hero instead of just her rent sponsor. $15,000, I repeated. "I know it's a lot, but I swear to you, Eli, I'll pay back every penny with interest. And more than that, if you do this for me, if you believe in me enough to take this risk, I promise things will be different between us. Better." "Different how?" "I'll stop taking you for granted. I'll stop treating you like you're just there to pay bills and stay out of the way. I'll be the girlfriend you deserve, the partner you fell in love with." She reached out and took my hands, and her skin was soft and warm and familiar. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But this could be our fresh start, our chance to build something together instead of just coexisting." There was the callback to my own words, the acknowledgement that our current arrangement wasn't sustainable for either of us. She was offering me exactly what I'd thought I wanted: the old Kara back, the relationship restored, the partnership I'd been mourning for months. All for the low, low price of $15,000 and my continued willingness to ignore obvious red flags. "I need to think about it," I said. Her face fell slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Of course. It's a big decision, and I'm springing it on you out of nowhere. Take all the time you need." "How long do I have? You said the opportunity was time-sensitive." "The warehouse deal closes next Friday, so a week?" "Okay, I'll have an answer for you by Thursday." She squeezed my hands and stood on her toes to kiss my cheek. "Thank you for even considering it. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm grateful you're willing to think about it." After she left, to celebrate with Trent, I assumed, I sat in my office and stared at my computer screen without really seeing it. The smart play was obvious. Tell her no, document everything I'd learned about their scam, and let them move on to their next mark. Cut my losses and get on with my life. But I found myself considering a different approach. A riskier approach, but potentially more satisfying. What if I said yes? What if I gave them exactly what they were asking for, but on my terms? What if I turned their own con against them and let them hang themselves with the rope I was providing? I opened a new document and started typing. Not code this time, but a contract. A detailed, legally binding agreement that would give Kara the $15,000 she wanted, but with conditions that would protect my investment and expose their operation if things went sideways. If they were going to treat me like a mark, I'd be the most dangerous mark they'd ever encountered. The kind that smiled and signed the check and documented everything for the inevitable moment when the whole house of cards came tumbling down. I worked until 3 in the morning, crafting the perfect trap. By the time I finished, I was exhausted but oddly exhilarated. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I was the one in control. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Thursday arrived with the kind of gray Seattle drizzle that made everything look like a noir film, which seemed appropriate for what I was about to do. I'd spent the week refining my plan, consulting with a lawyer friend about contract language, and practicing my poker face in the bathroom mirror. Kara had been on her best behavior all week, making coffee in the morning, asking about my day, even cooking dinner twice. It was like watching someone cosplay as the girlfriend she used to be, hitting all the right notes but missing the underlying music that made it real. "So," she said over breakfast, trying to sound casual, "have you had a chance to think about what we discussed?" "I have." I pulled a manila folder from my laptop bag and set it on the table between us. "And I want to help." Her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Eli, that's... Thank you. Thank you so much. There are some conditions." The light dimmed slightly. "What kind of conditions?" "Business conditions. If I'm going to invest $15,000 in your boutique, I want to make sure it's a sound investment." I opened the folder and pulled out the contract I'd spent 3 days perfecting. I had a lawyer friend help me draw up a partnership agreement. She picked up the contract like it might explode. "A partnership agreement? Nothing complicated. It just outlines the terms of the loan, the repayment schedule, and my rights as an investor. Standard stuff." She flipped through the pages, her expression growing more confused with each clause. "Eli, this is really detailed. I want to protect both of us. The last thing I want is for money to come between us again." What the contract actually did was give me legal access to all of her business records, require her to provide detailed documentation of how the money was spent, and establish my right to inspect any inventory purchased with my investment. It also included a clause stating that if the business engaged in any illegal activities, the full amount of the loan would become immediately due, with penalties. "I don't understand some of this legal language," she said, still flipping through pages. "That's fine. You can have your business consultant look it over. What was his name again? Trent?" "Right. Trent." She closed the contract and looked at me with something that might have been suspicion. "You know, I didn't expect you to be so formal about this. $15,000 is formal money. If we're going to do this, we should do it right." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I believe in you, Kara. I believe in your business. But I also believe in being smart about investments." She squeezed my hand and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course. You're right. I'll have Trent look this over and get back to you." "Great. Just remember, the warehouse deal closes tomorrow, so we'll need to move quickly once everything's approved." That afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Coffee shop on Pine Street, 6 p.m. Come alone. Trent, obviously." I'd been wondering when he'd make his move. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and chose a table near the back, where I could see the entire room but wouldn't be easily overheard. Trent showed up exactly on time, looking less polished than usual. His hair wasn't perfectly styled, and there were dark circles under his blue eyes. "You're a clever little shit, aren't you?" he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "I prefer thorough, but I'll take clever." He pulled out a folded copy of my contract and slapped it on the table. "This isn't a partnership agreement. This is a trap. It's a legally binding document that protects my investment. If that feels like a trap, maybe you should ask yourself why. Cut the act. We both know what this is about." "Do we? Because I thought it was about helping Kara's business succeed." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I know you've been watching us. I know you know about the storage unit, about the inventory deals. You think you're so smart, playing detective while we're out here trying to build something real? I think I'm an investor doing due diligence. If there's something about the business I should know, now would be a good time to share it. The business is fine. Better than fine. Kara's got real talent, real vision. She just needs capital to make it work. Then the contract shouldn't be a problem. He sat back, studying my face. What's your game here? What do you really want? I want Kara to succeed. I want my investment to be profitable. And I want everything to be legal and above board. I picked up the contract and tapped it against the table. This document ensures all of that. And if we don't sign it, then I don't invest. Kara finds another way to finance her expansion, and I keep my money in the bank earning a pathetic interest rate. He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite spit out. Finally, he said, "You're not as stupid as you look." "Thank you. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. This isn't over." "I hope not. I'm looking forward to seeing what Kara does with the investment." He left without another word, and I sat there finishing my coffee and watching the rain streak down the windows. Phase 1 was complete. Now I just had to wait and see if they were desperate enough to sign a contract that would give me everything I needed to destroy them. They were. Kara came home that evening with the signed contract and a smile that was trying too hard to be genuine. Trent looked everything over and said it was standard investor language, a little more detailed than usual, but nothing unreasonable. Excellent. I pulled out my checkbook. Yes, I still use checks because I'm apparently 90 years old, and wrote out $15,000 to Kara Milton, DBA Milton Boutique. "Here's to your success." She took the check with trembling hands. "Eli, I can't tell you how much this means to me, how much you mean to me. Just make me proud and make us some money." The next morning, they made their move. I watched from my office window as Trent's Mustang pulled up to our building, followed by a rented moving truck. They spent 4 hours loading boxes from the storage unit into Kara's car and the truck, and I documented every minute of it with my security cameras. Then I made a phone call. "Seattle Police Department, how can I help you?" "I'd like to report a possible theft in progress. I have reason to believe someone is transporting stolen merchandise." It took 3 hours for the police to track down the moving truck, but when they did, they found exactly what I'd expected. Boxes of designer clothing with the original tags removed and new tags from non-existent boutiques attached. Counterfeit merchandise mixed with genuinely stolen items, all of it being transported to a pop-up event location downtown. Trent was arrested on the spot. Kara, who hadn't been in the truck when it was stopped, called me crying 20 minutes later. "Eli, something terrible has happened. Trent's been arrested and the police are saying the inventory was stolen. I had no idea. I swear to you, I thought it was all legitimate." "That's awful," I said, injecting just the right amount of shock and sympathy into my voice. "Are you okay? Do you need me to come get you?" "I'm at the police station. They want to question me about the business, about where the money came from for the inventory purchase." Her voice was shaking. "Eli, they know about your investment. They're going to want to talk to you too." "Of course. I'll cooperate fully. I want to get to the bottom of this as much as they do." What I didn't tell her was that I'd already talked to the police, that I'd provided them with copies of all my documentation, including the contract that proved I'd done due diligence as an investor and had specifically included clauses protecting against illegal activity. The detective I spoke with was impressed by my thoroughness. "Most people who get caught up in these scams don't have this kind of documentation," he said, flipping through my folder of evidence. "You might have saved yourself a lot of legal trouble." "I just wanted to protect my investment," I said. "I had no idea my girlfriend was involved with someone who would put her business at risk like this." By the time the dust settled, Trent was facing charges for trafficking in stolen goods, fraud, and conspiracy. Kara was charged as an accessory, though her lawyer was confident they could get the charges reduced or dismissed if she cooperated fully with the investigation. The $15,000 was seized as evidence, but my contract made it clear that the money was a loan contingent on legal business activities. I'd get it back eventually, with interest, courtesy of the state's Victim Restitution Fund. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was watching Kara's carefully constructed world fall apart in real time. Her boutique was finished, obviously. Her reputation in the local fashion scene was destroyed. Her social media followers, who'd been following along with her entrepreneur journey, turned on her viciously when the story hit the local news. And her relationship with Trent, which had seemed so passionate and meaningful when it was conducted in secret, crumbled under the weight of mutual accusations and legal bills. She moved out of our apartment 2 weeks later, unable to make rent without the income from her now defunct business. I helped her pack because I'm not a monster and because I wanted to savor every moment of her humiliation. "I'm sorry," she said as she loaded the last box into her car. "For all of it. For what I said to Jake. For lying to you. For getting you involved in this mess. I know you are. Do you think you can ever forgive me?" I pretended to consider the question. "Maybe someday, when I'm not feeling like a rent sponsor anymore." She flinched like I'd slapped her, and I felt a surge of satisfaction that was probably unhealthy, but absolutely deserved. "For what it's worth," she said, "you're not the same person I fell in love with 3 years ago." "You're right," I said. "I'm better." I watched her drive away, then went back inside to my apartment. My apartment now, since I could afford the rent on my own, and she'd forfeited any claim to the lease when she got arrested. That evening, I got a text from Dave at the gym. "Saw the news. You okay?" "Never better," I replied. "See you tomorrow for that combination lesson." "You got it, champ." I poured myself a drink, the good whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion, and sat on my couch, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Rain was falling again, but it looked different now. Cleaner, somehow. My phone buzzed with a notification from the dating app I'd downloaded but never used. Someone named Amelia had liked my profile. She was a data analyst, apparently, with dark hair and an interesting smile. I opened the app and started typing a message. It was time to find out what it felt like to date someone who saw me as more than a rent sponsor.